Hey everyone, Mario again, coming at you with another movie review. Now, today's review is a movie that I saw for the first time over a year ago, and I actually forgot to review it, and I've been meaning to, so I decided to revisit it, which I felt now was a good time considering that the newest sequel in the series is coming, and I plan on reviewing all the films until then, even though I'm doing another thing right now on my channel. I don't know how I'm going to upload these. I might just do it as a long series review all in one video, at least the first few entries, or I'll just do it like I normally do, one video at a time. Haven't decided yet. You probably already know the answer to this when this video is uploaded, but anyway, the movie of course I'm talking about is the 1988 action film directed by John McTiernan and starring Bruce Willis. That movie is Die Hard. This is the DVD I got, one disc. It has a few special features on it. It has a commentary with the director on it, has a scene-specific commentary by the special effects supervisor, has another commentary that's a subtitle one by the cast and crew, and then of course it has a branching version with the extended power shutdown scene cut back in, which the scene was in black and white. That's the version I watched this time. Didn't really notice much difference. I only noticed the black and white stuff a couple times, then again I was also doing something else at the time that scene took place, so it could be that. Now, in addition to Bruce Willis, the film stars Alan Rickman as our villain, Hans Gruber. Alexander I'm gonna have trouble with this last name because it's Russian. Godunov as Carl, his main henchman. Bonnie Bedelia as Holly Gennaro McClane, Bruce Willis' character, John McClane's wife. Then of course we got Reginald Val Johnson as Sergeant Al Powell. You all know Reginald from Family Matters. And of course we got Paul Gleason as Dwayne Robinson, the Deputy Chief of Police. Definitely gonna have trouble with this first name. Dvorexu or something like that. It looks French. I always have trouble pronouncing French. Dvorexu White is his last name, as Argyle, the limousine driver. And then of course we've got William Atherton as a reporter named Richard Thornburg. Among others, I noticed a guy that I recognize from the Goonies as one of the FBI agents, which I thought was perfect casting, at least for the role he had to do. Now to start off words, we got to go to the source material, because this movie is based off a 1979 novel called Nothing Lasts Forever, which was written by Roderick Thorpe. Now, the novel was a sequel to his earlier novel, The Detective, which of course he wrote the novel with the intention of it being adapted into a film sequel to the adaptation of a movie called The Detective, which was a Frank Sinatra film. Sinatra apparently turned down to offer the star in the sequel, and the story was altered to be a standalone film. Some changes that were made in the final product were that the older hero in the novel became younger. In the book, he's trying to save his daughter, and the movie, it's his wife. The American Klaxon Oil Corporation became the Japanese Nakatomi Corporation. And, of course, the novel is overall darker and more serious. And it also contains politically motivated fighters, whereas in the movie, they're basically thieves who are terrorists. And before the movie the movie we know was made, apparently it was after the Sinatra thing, it was going to be a sequel to Commando, which you could see Arnold doing in a movie like this. It would have been interesting to see, but it makes you wonder how could they have worked the whole daughter thing into it. They'd have had to have made it take place some years later, because his daughter was like, what, 10 in Commando? It'd have to be 10 years later, so the sequel would have to have waited a while for it to at least be believable, at least with how Arnold looks. Either that or it'd have to be another family member, because obviously, unless he's divorced, which doesn't seem like he's divorced in Commando. It's kind of hard to believe it's the girl's mother unless it's another woman that he's with after the events in the movie. But Arnold, of course, passed on it because apparently he did not think a sequel would do well, which I could see why. The only sequel he made at that point was Conan the Destroyer, and that really does get a bum rap, which I have to sit down and watch it, but understand it's a little bit sillier than the original one, but I'll just see what I think about it when I get around to watching him. Anyway, the plot of the movie is that we got New York City police detective John McClane arriving in L.A. to reconcile with his estranged wife, where there's a good opening scene where you see him talking to his neighbor on the plane. Not his neighbor from New York, but a neighbor, and you know, the seating. Neighbor sees his police equipment, he's like, "It's alright, I'm a cop." And pull out a big stuffed animal bear, too. I didn't know they used that as carry-on luggage. Anyway, McClane's limo driver, Argyle, drives McClane to the Nakatomi Plaza, and they have some good back and forth on the way there. And of course, McClane gets there, he tries to find his wife Holly, sees she's using her maiden name, Gennaro, which, by the way, is actually taken from the novel. That actually is the last name of the McClane character's daughter in the novel. At least from what I looked up. Just like the villain's last name is Gruber in the novel. So it does kind of follow, like I said, it follows it pretty well. Only changing subtle stuff. Anyway, he eventually does find his wife up at the Christmas party that the building's having. McClane goes to change his clothes, and while he's there, the party is disrupted by the arrival of our villain Hans Gruber and his heavily armed mercenary group. Carl, Franco, Tony, Theo, Alexander, Marco, Christoph, Eddie, Uli, Heinrich, Fritz, and James. I'm sorry, I had to break into my German accent there. There will be no questions, there will be no women priests, and no one will wear a condom. Jesus loves you. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Nobody saw that. Bruno Gittica. I am sorry, I just couldn't resist doing that. Anyway, Gruber and his minions seize control of the tower, and all the people in the party are taken as hostages, the only exception being McClane, because he manages to slip away. Gruber singles out a Nakatomi executive, claiming that he plans on teaching the company a lesson for its greed. From that, you think, oh, he's probably going to be a communist terrorist, trying to teach the capitalists a lesson by taking away their money. Now, of course, Gruber, throughout a majority of the movie, they're trying to get into this vault, which has like 6 seals, which inside is like $640 million in bearer bonds, which that's a lot of money, even by today's standards. That's a lot of money, but it was a lot more back in the 80s, obviously. But you could see why they'd want to get their hands on it. Now, of course, one thing I will say is that Gruber is a cold-hearted individual. He has no qualms about killing anybody, as we see a lot throughout the whole movie, which I'm not going to spoil the specific details of, but we first see it with one of the executives. Now, at this point, McClane starts to get into some shootouts with some of the henchman guys. He kills a couple of them, and he takes his weapon. And, of course, I just love that taunt, how he sends the body down in the elevator. Now I have a machine gun. Ho, ho, ho. You gotta know if you were a cop, you would do that if you knew you could get away with it. And of course, now the movie is basically Gruber's men trying to kill him while trying to maintain their cover. Then when the police show up, try to make sure the police can't come in and everything. And how the police come, it's kind of funny, because McClane has to go up to the roof, try to contact them on a secure channel. This is going to be an FCC violation. They'd come down here and arrest me and all that. Lady, what am I ordering, a pizza? I know I'm screwing up the dialogue, but I think you get the point of it. So they decide to send an officer, and that officer turns out to be Sergeant Al Powell. At first, they set his mind at ease. Then when McClane throws the body out the window, he calls him back up, and that's when they get the little standoff thing, and that's how it is the rest of the movie until the FBI takes over, and then they start to do crap like cut the power and all that. Well, inside the building, there's Gruber and all of them are trying to get John McClane throughout the whole movie. McClane's wife is trying to keep everyone in the hostage situation under control. Gruber is trying to still get into the vault. And there's even a scene where Gruber himself goes to help try to find McClane, which is a pretty funny scene because we get to see Alan Rickman speaking outside of his normal accent. And it is a kind of funny scene. I'm not going to spoil it, but it's just one of those scenes you're like, yeah, good move, McClane, good move. Those of you who've seen the movie know what I'm talking about. Now, anyway, McTiernan's direction for the film, you can tell from this movie he knows how to shoot an action movie. And this is the second action classic that he directed in a row. The one he directed right before this was Predator. And at least in my opinion, he followed it up with another good movie, The Hunt for Red October, although that one is more of a drawn-out movie. It's not a straightforward action movie. That's more of a drama piece, and I can understand why some people may not like it. I enjoy it, but I can understand. And he followed it up with Medicine Man, which I hear the trailer lied because it made it look like an action movie. I'm just going to take a look to see what it actually kind of was. Okay, I see what I could guess from the kind of picture what type of movie. It looks like it could be kind of like a drama. Maybe I'll look at it one day. And of course, after that, he did Last Action Hero, which people either like it or they hate it. Then he returned to the series with Die Hard with a Vengeance, which I've briefly skimmed through that movie. It looks like a fun movie. Then he followed that up with The 13th Warrior, a film I still need to see because I've read the book and I actually do love the book. I love how it's kind of presented. Has the Crichton style that I recognize from Jurassic Park and The Lost World. It's kind of similar to those, at least in how he writes it. More so Jurassic Park. Then the Thomas Crown Affair, the Rollerball, the Basic, and he hasn't directed a movie in the last 10 years. Mostly because of his legal troubles, but I have to say, once he's all taken care of with those legal troubles, I want to see him return to directing, especially action films. I don't know if they'll make another Die Hard movie after this, but if they do and he's out, I'd like to see if he would return to it. If not, maybe another type of action movies. Like, if they do a fourth Expendables movie after Expendables 3, maybe he should direct it. Let me see. I want to know what you guys would think on that. If, granted, of course, there's that whole thing with Sly and creative control, but you never know. I think Willis would probably tell Sly, let McTiernan do what he does. Don't make this a McClane versus Rambo situation. You don't want it. Now, the music was by Michael Kamen, which he always does good scores, and it fit the tone of the movie. This is back, of course, when Fox was Fox and actually let directors do stuff. You know, instead of starting their backseat directing crap that they started with Alien 3, but I'm digressing. Bruce Willis is John McClane, perfect casting. And he really does fit the character. And this is one of those situations where I could not see them putting someone else as this character. You just couldn't. You couldn't. It's just like Sylvester Stallone is Rambo, Arnold Schwarzenegger is the T-800, Bruce Willis is John McClane. Just simple as that. You like it. You really like the character. You feel for him. You kind of understand his frustration, and you really do root for him, especially since he does the whole movie barefoot. You even see by the end that his feet all messed up, bleeding feet and all. You're like, yeah. And of course, I do like that we do get to see his relationship with his wife because it's damaged at the beginning. They get into a minor fight at one point, and by the end, they do heal their relationship because they do spend a lot of the time of the movie thinking about their relationship. So I'm glad that they repair it. A little extreme way to repair it, but they repaired it. Well, and I would say, even though she's only in a handful of scenes, Bonnie, I did like as McClane's wife. She's only in the, from what I understand, she's only in the next film. Which I don't know the story reasons, and if you're watching this and it's by itself, don't spoil it in the comments. I want to find out myself. Alan Rickman is Hans Gruber. Perfect casting. Rickman's always good in whatever he's in. I like him as Snape in the Harry Potter movies. I liked him in Sweeney Todd as the judge. I liked him in the I think it was Sense and Sensibility he was in. The Shakespeare movie he was in. Yeah, it was Sense and Sensibility. I liked him in that role too. He's always a good actor to see. And as a villain, I have to say this is probably my favorite role of his. It's either this or Snape. It's kind of hard for me to pick, but this is probably it because he's just so vile that you really hate him. That's why I would say he was good with Snape. And now Alexander as Carl, I thought he did a good job. And I only recognize him from one other movie personally, and that was his little cameo in North. That's a movie I bet some of you people are going to say, what, really? You want to revisit that? Yes, I do. You'll see why when I eventually do review it. Reginald as Sergeant Al Powell, he did a pretty good job. I do like the back and forth him and McClane have on the phone. You do kind of buy them as kind of fast friends, and I know he returns for the first sequel, so I look forward to it. If they ever do a Die Hard 6, I'd like to see them try to work his character into it some way. Never know. Then again, maybe the next films will explain why they don't. Paul Gleason is the chief of police. You really want to smack that guy because you can understand why he's thinking the way he is about the stuff throughout the movie, but we, the audience, from our perspective, we just want to smack him. Let Joe McClane do whatever the heck he's doing. He knows what he's doing. William Atherton as Richard Thornburg. I just wanted to smack this little prick. Especially when he threatened the nanny to call ICS or whatever on her. If I was a nanny, I would have slammed the door. That's blackmail. Or if I was a neighbor, I would have said, buddy, she already said no. Now get your fucking cameras out of there. Then of course the guys who played the Nakatomi executives good. The guy that played that other guy, I forget which character's name is, he's friend of the wife's or something. It kind of looks like he's hitting on her. He did a good job, but I can't say I didn't mind what happened to him. The guys that played the rest of Gruber's minions, I thought they did serviceable jobs. And I do like the use of the Ode of Joy at the few parts it's in. Overall, it's a classic film. Runs at a pretty good pace. It's a little over 2 hours, but it doesn't really feel like it's a 2-hour movie. It's one of those films that you really wish kept going on and on. And it's filmed for $28 million, and it's one of those movies where you could see a majority of that budget put into the film. It's not one where you hear the budget and you're like, really? It cost that much money to make? And it made $140 million, so you could tell from that why they greenlit a sequel. And of course, I look forward to watching the sequel, even though out of all the sequels, people either say this one's the worst or the fourth movie's the worst. I'll make up my own mind. Because, by the way, before I see the fifth movie, I am going to rank the sequels. Anyway, my rating for Die Hard is 5 out of 5 because I have no problem with the movie. Has great acting, great action direction from McTiernan, good score, good special effects, excellent special effects actually, and altogether is an amazing, fun film. Now I'm going to be reviewing Die Hard 2, Die Harder, the 1990 sequel to Die Hard, and in the director's chair this time we got Rennie Harlin. And like the original, it stars Bruce Willis, and of course Bonnie Bedelia is playing his wife again. And of course we got Reginald Bill Johnson in a small role as Sergeant Al Powell, but less screen time than he did before. Then of course, in addition to that, we got actors such as William Atherton, oh yeah, he's in it again, excuse me. Dennis Franz, Robert Costanzo, Tom Bauer, Franco Nero, William Sadler, Robert Patrick is in a small role, John Amos, among others. Now, this is something I just found out as well. Like the first one, this is based off a novel. It is based off the novel 58 Minutes. Which was written by the late author Walter Wagner. He died back in '04. And I've never really heard of any of this stuff. Okay, he wrote a Mission Impossible book. He wrote a couple of series called I Spy. Right before he wrote 58 Minutes, he wrote the novelization of the Schwarzenegger film Raw Deal. And the last book he wrote was one called Kelly's People, so he's gone. Anyway, the plot of the film, the movie was... I'm talking about the novel, excuse me, sorry. The plot of the novel was that we had a character named Frank Malone, who was a divorced NYPD captain who was waiting at JFK International for his young daughter to arrive, who was going to spend Christmas with him. Unfortunately, a mysterious stranger called Number One calls the control tower and tells the crew of the airport that he has cut the power to the runway lights in every airport in the vicinity, and he has hijacked their equipment. And they only have 58 minutes to meet his demands until the first plane, which ironically is the one carrying Frank's daughter, runs out of fuel and crashes. And a blizzard's coming in, so the planes have nowhere else to go. Now Frank has to jump into action and save his daughter. That's basically all it says on the Wikipedia page. So you can see there where they got the basic plot. So they probably did change a lot of stuff. Probably a lot more than they changed for the for the novel that the first film is based off of. But then again, it was only minor stuff to make it more commercial. Anyway. Now the plot of the film itself is that it takes place on Christmas Eve, 2 years after the Nakatomi Tower incident, we see John McClane. He's waiting at Washington Dulles International Airport for his wife to arrive from LA. Now, ironically, the reporter Richard Thornburg is also on the plane with his wife Holly, so you can tell there's going to be a little tension there because of what she did to him at the end of the first movie. Anyway, McClane, it starts off with a bad day. His mother-in-law's car gets towed by a jerk cop, who the cop is played, of course, by Robert Costanzo, who I recognize mostly as playing Arnold's buddy, or should I say buddy, in Total Recall. But here, the moment you see him, you know he's going to be a cop. You want to smack him. By the end, you're right. Now, while McClane's in the airport bar, he spots two men, that they're in army fatigues, and he notices that they're carrying a package, and he also notices that one of them has a gun. His cop senses tingle, so he follows them, and then there's a shootout. He kills one of the men, the other escapes. And of course, eventually we find out that the dead man is a mercenary, thought to have been killed in action. And of course, McClane at first thinks, oh, there's got to be a plot afoot. Of course, you could tell that the cops, especially Captain Lorenzo, played by Dennis Franz, don't believe him. And they don't believe him until more crap hits the fan. And that crap comes in the form of former U.S. Army Special Forces Colonel Stewart, played in the film by William Sadler, and other members of his unit. They set up a base in a nearby church, and they take control of the air traffic control systems. They cut off all communications to the planes, and they seize total control of the airport. Now their goal is to rescue a General Ramon Esperanza, played by Franco Nero, who is basically a dictator of Valverde. All action fans of the 80s will recognize that's the name of that freaking country that they used in Commando, that they also, I believe, used it in Predator. They always had to use it as a fictional Central American country when they didn't want to offend someone. Nowadays they dropped that, but I think this was one of the last times they used it, but could be. Anyway, General Esperanza is being extradited to the United States to stand trial on drug trafficking charges, which you don't really hear much about people like this being charged anymore, which was why probably in retrospect the war on drugs is a very expensive mistake, at least with how we run it currently. I personally think it's a mistake with marijuana, but that's an argument for another day, another type of video. Oh, sorry about that, I had to pause real quick, but anyway, you could tell with them having total control, they're going to threaten something if their demands aren't met. And they demand a Boeing airplane so they can go to another country with the general. And they warn that if the airport's controllers try to restore control, something's going to happen. And I'm going to spoil that they do actually fall through on this threat at one point. I'm not going to spoil what it is. But of course, you could tell because of this, McClane's going to try to save something, especially considering his wife's on one of the planes. And since they cannot redirect the planes, they're going to have to keep circling, and that's where they are majority of the movie. So the plot of the film is that McClane is trying to stop the terrorists, but he's helped off and on by the cops and stuff. It usually depends on whether or not they agree with what McClane wants to do or not. And he's also helped by some of the other people that work at the airport. And that's basically the plot of the movie, trying to stop the terrorists. And there's a lot of great action stuff, and that's all the plot I'm going to go into, really. Rennie Harlan, he's a great action director, and before this, the film he did right before this was Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master. And then he followed this up with a movie called The Adventures of Ford Fairlane, which I haven't seen. He followed that up with the Academy Award nominated film Cliffhanger, which was another great film. He followed that up with the massive flop Cutthroat Island, which I do enjoy that film. Followed it up with The Long Kiss Goodnight, and then the great killer shark movie Deep Blue Sea, and the only film from the 2000s that I've really seen I've only seen two of his films from the 2000s: Exorcist: The Beginning, which I have to revisit that one day, and 12 Rounds, which I know someone's gonna say, what, you actually saw that film? Yeah, I thought it was decent. Probably gonna have to rewatch it again, because that was back when I've only seen a handful of action films. My opinion on it might have changed, but I thought it was decent at most. The Covenant I haven't seen. Driven, Mindhunters I haven't seen. Cleaner I haven't seen. 5 Days of War is a film is the last film he's done. Let's see what the heck type of film that is. Oh, it's an action film. Oh, who's in it? Hey, Val Kilmer's in it. That's interesting, actually. I mean, one of these days I'll check it out. Anyway, Bruce Willis, like the first film, he's great as John McClane, and he brings some more of that smart aleck humor to the film. Bonnie as his wife, very good again. She's not in it as much as the first film, but then again, the danger's not as direct as the first film. It's kind of indirect danger. Just think of it. The first film, she's actually in the room with the terrorists. This time she's not. Dennis Franz as the police captain, I thought he did a good job. Up until the end of the movie, I wanted to smack him, but at the end, he did kind of redeem himself a little bit. Especially since he got one of my favorite lines of the movie. Let's go kick some ass! Of course, you all know Dennis Franz from NYPD Blue. He's only in one scene, but Reginald VelJohnson. It was good to see him back as Sergeant Powell. Too bad he's not in the next movie, then again, he's probably not really called for. Robert Costanzo as Sergeant Vito Lorenzo. You really want to smack him, especially at the beginning. He's not gonna. You can tell he's kind of a by-the-book prick cop, so I would not want to deal with this guy. Other than this and Total Recall, I only know him from one other thing, and that is voicing the character of Phil in Kingdom Hearts, taking over for good buddy Danny DeVito. Now the terrorists, Franco Nero as the general. For what the role is, I'd say he's serviceable. William Sadler is more the main villain than the general is. Then again, he's more the direct villain. They're trying to save him, but he does a good job. I will say he's not as good as, let's say, Alan Rickman was in the first movie, but then again, that's Alan Rickman. It's going to be kind of hard to surpass him as a villain, unless, then again, who they got in the next movie is kind of a good, one of those close ones. I just have to see the movie to see what I think of it. John Amos as Major Grant. I thought he did a good job. The only thing I know him from is a role in Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, at least directly. Then, of course, in a small role, I did not notice this in the movie. I just noticed it in the credit roll. John Leguizamo was in the movie. I'm like, what? He played a mercenary? Huh? He must have been a background one, but yeah, he's in it. Cool. Of course, we all know Super Mario Brothers was basically his breakout role, at least for people like, oh, it's John Leguizamo. The news couldn't even pronounce his name, but I could feel him. I know how hard it is to pronounce his name. Michael Kamen, the guy who did the score for the first movie, returns. And the score is very good as well. I will say the film, it's one of those sequels that is a very good sequel. I will say I don't think it's as good as the first movie, but it's one of those ones that falls into the category of where it's not as good, it is still a very great film, and it's an entertaining sequel. And I do not see why this film gets some or a bad rap sometimes. I don't know. Maybe it's maybe a thing in retrospect with the third and fourth movies out that people crap on this movie a little bit, but that's just from what I hear. I don't know if there's any truth to it, because most of the people I've talked with the film actually enjoy it. It has a 7.1 on IMDb, and through Rotten Tomatoes, I'm going to check to see what its score is. Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 66 with the critics and a 73 with the audience, so it does have a good fan base. And just so you guys know, Die Hard 2 and 3 are the only ones I do not have the DVDs for. I have the DVD, as you saw, I had the DVD for 1, and then of course I got the PG-13 DVD for the fourth one, which I know I usually like to see the unrated cuts if it's an option, but that's the one they had, so we'll see if it's entertaining. If it's entertaining, maybe I'll spend the extra money and get the unrated cut as well. That's just me, of course, but anyway, my rating for Die Hard 2 is 4.5 out of 5 stars. Like I said, it's not as good, but it's still a good film. Rennie Harlin directs the film very well. You can tell it has a similar feel to the original, but not the same exact feel, which is one of the reasons I hear that some people prefer the next sequel over this one, because it's McTiernan again, but we'll just see if I feel, let's just see if I feel it's the directing style, but still a fun film, and I recommend you all check it out if you haven't, but I have a feeling most of the people who watch my reviews probably have already seen this film. And I'm back again with the third entry in the Die Hard series, Die Hard with a Vengeance. It came out in 1995, about 5 years after Die Hard 2, if I remember correctly. Yes, I'm checking the years just to make sure. Yep, 5 years. And it's once again directed by John McTiernan. And Bruce Willis is really the only major actor, or the only actor, it seems, from the previous films who returns. And alongside him is Samuel L. Jackson, Jeremy Irons, Graham Greene, Colleen Camp, among others. Now, unlike the previous two, this one is not based on a book, so it's a totally original story. And I've never seen any of the special features, so I don't know if any of the stuff about it, about the production and everything. But McTiernan returning to be the director, I will say offhand after watching the movie, I noticed that it has a style, at least from how the scene, everything is shot, and maybe a little bit of the editing, more like Die Hard than Die Hard 2 was. Die Hard 2 still had that feel, and also probably because of some of the characters. It just seems that this one seems more like Die Hard than Die Hard 2 does. Not saying that I'm saying Die Hard 2 is a bad sequel, it's just maybe it has something to do with the fact it's directed by the same guy. And I'm gonna say off the top, after watching it, I did like Die Hard with a Vengeance a little bit more than Die Hard 2. I will say it's probably because they changed the formula a little bit and made this kind of a buddy film. Because think of it, the first two films, it's all John McClane going through there. The first movie, he has someone on the outside trying to help him. Second one, he basically has to work with some of the cops and also the FBI, but also going off to do his own stuff occasionally. And this one, it's just him and the character of Zeus. Well, they're separated a couple times. It's mostly them trying to stop the villain. Anyway, I'll stop right there and get into the plot. The plot is it takes place in New York City, and it begins with a bomb destroying a department store, and a man called Simon phones the major case unit of the NYPD claiming responsibility for the bombing. He demands that suspended police officer John McClane be dropped in Harlem wearing a sandwich box, and I'm not gonna, it says I hate and then the N-word. Which just the thought of someone demanding that, it's like, what? Because you know, unless it's a black cop being asked to play that, you know that it's not going to end well for him if he's there for a while. Especially since he happens run into Samuel L. Jackson. But anyway, after walking for a little bit, which is just funny to see the reaction, like we see a little old lady look at him like, Crack, are you crazy? Basically, it'll look like that. Anyway, we meet a Harlem shop owner named Zeus, played by Samuel L. Jackson. He seems like an honest enough guy, but the moment you see him, you can tell that there's something a little off about him. And as we find out through the movie, it seems like he doesn't really like white people. It's kind of subtle, but it's probably that little minor racism thing, but it also might have to do with, you know, the whole stereotypical African American being on welfare and all that. And he even points out when McClane seems to be bringing up stereotypes, even though it's probably just him interpreting it that way. But anyway, Zeus spots McClane. He tries to get him off the street before he's killed. But a gang of black youths attack the pair because they notice the sign, and they barely escape. They return to the station, and of course there we find out that Simon stole a lot of explosives, and he calls them again and tells them he's going to put McClane and Zeus through a series of games. They have to do this to prevent more explosions. And of course, that's the plot of the movie. They have to go through some of the games while trying to figure out stuff about Simon. And of course, one explosion they barely prevent. It still happens, but they barely prevent a major tragedy with it. And of course, from there, they're trying to unravel what Simon's real plot is. Which I'm going to tell you right here, that one of the things about Simon is that we find out he is the brother of Hans Gruber. You guys don't remember Alan Rickman's character from the first film? Which, of course, I have to say, if they're going to get an actor to play Alan Rickman's brother, you can't get anyone better than Jeremy Irons. And with that in mind, Simon is similar to his brother with how he thinks, but also a little bit different. If you've seen both films, you know what I'm talking about. But they think similarly because of what their plans involve, and even McClane even talks about this. But the difference is, I'm not gonna. It'd be a big spoiler, but near the end you see it. I'll just say it involves backstabbing. That's all I'm gonna say about it. And as you can tell, that partially part of the reason Simon's doing this is to get revenge on McClane. Which, of course, you could tell just from the fact he wanted John McClane in the first place that it's partially for vengeance. But also, his plot is similar to what Hans wanted to do in the first film. You know, robbery. I'm not going to spoil what and stuff, but it's built into the film pretty quickly, and you could spot it. And of course, it takes McClane and Zeus a while to figure it out, but as they do, you can tell they're going to try to stop him, and that's what basically the movie is, dealing with the games that he's playing with them and also trying to stop him. And of course, that's where we get a lot of back and forth between them. Now, one scene that really stands out, probably with the back and forth between the characters of John McClane and Zeus, is probably when they're in the park trying to stop the bomb with the gallons of water. They're trying to talk. They're starting to get into a little argument. He's like, say it! You're about to call me! No, I'm going to call you an asshole! Asshole! Yeah, it's just... Have I oppressed you somehow, Zeus? Have I oppressed your people somehow? You just don't like me because you're a racist. What? Yeah, you're doing all this because I'm white. I'm doing this because you're going to get me killed. I know I messed it up a little bit, but I think you get the gist of it. Now, Bruce Willis, once again, is great as John McClane. One thing, though, I want to ask about the character, about how they developed him, is why the heck is the character of John McClane and his wife separated in this movie? I mean, think of it. First movie, it made sense. Or at least with the backstory they gave, it made sense. At the end, they reconciled. They were together in the second movie. What the heck happened during the 5 years? They don't really talk about it. They just mention it in the third... At some point in the third act that they're separated and have been for a year because of an argument or something. It's like, what? What's going on? Was there something happening in between movies? Did John want to move back to New York or something? Because that's one thing they never mention, at least in this movie. Maybe they mention in the next one, is that in Die Hard 2, he had transferred to LA and now he's back in New York. What happened? That's one thing I want to know. Is there like a deleted scene that explains it? Is it explained in a novelization or something? That's one thing. That's just probably one of my few nitpicks with the plot, is that they never explain that. It's like, is there like a missing Die Hard movie somewhere? But I do like that at points that they actually do look, that he does try to reconcile with her, but from what I understand, they mentioned them being divorced in the fourth film, so I guess it doesn't matter anyway. The only thing we're going to see from that again is probably the fact that that McClane's children are having bigger roles now in the films. Anyway, Samuel L. Jackson as Zeus. He is wonderful. He is both subtle, and he has subtle moments, and then he has, of course, over-the-top moments. And it's Samuel L. Jackson, so you know he's going to be good. It's going to be good. He's good at the over-the-top moments. Especially, like, there's some stuff at the end where he's just laughing. And then also some parts, you know, like I mentioned, during some of the chase scenes and stuff. Now, Jeremy Irons is Simon Gruber. Perfect. He is very subtle, never going over the top, at least that I noticed. Maybe a little bit near the end when he's pissed. But for the most part, his performance is very subtle. He does his German-like accent very well. And he delivers his lines flawlessly. And with how he speaks and everything, you could buy him as being Hans Gruber's brother. And it actually makes you wish there was at least like a deleted scene or something that showed the two brothers together, maybe like a flashback at their last talking. If there is one, I'd like to see it, because that'd be an interesting scene. It'd be interesting to see Irons and Rickman together, because as far as I know, they've never been in a movie together. Correct me if I'm wrong if you know. The rest of the actors did a good job. You know, Graham Greene as a detective in McClane's squad. Then we got Colleen Camp as a female detective in the squad. Larry Briegman as the head of their squad. They do a good job. And also, before I get too far, another thing I want to know is, maybe I didn't notice because it was my first time watching it and I just didn't catch it, but why is McClane suspended anyway? Then again, I know it's a stupid question to ask from what we've seen in the first two movies, but what did he specifically do this time? Did he punch the mayor's daughter by mistake? Just asking. Anyway, the movie was filmed for $90 million and it made over $3.5 million, and deservedly so. And you can see a lot of that $90 million up on screen. It has some special effects budget, you know, and of course the acting and all that. John McTiernan, you can definitely tell he directed this movie. His style is handprinted all over the movie. And of course, it got mixed reviews, as you would expect a movie like this to get. But one of the things that was mostly praised was the relationship between Zeus and McClane. Deservedly so. Like the previous two movies, Michael Kamen did the score for the movie, and it fits the tone of the movie like a glove. The only other thing of note to mention is there were two alternate endings. One of them was filmed, one of them wasn't. The one that was filmed would take place sometimes after the events of the film. It apparently is on the special edition DVD. Basically, the robbery that happens in the movie succeeds, and McClane is basically scapegoated for everything that went wrong with his past. You can see how easy it probably would be. He's fired after more than 10 years on the force, and the FBI causes his pension to disappear. Anyway, somehow he still manages to track down Simon, similar to the way that he does in the movie. And of course, because of how... I'm not going to spoil that because that'd be spoiling the plot, but with how Simon got whatever they stole away, he did it in an interesting way. McClane basically tracks him down and plays basically a game involving a rocket launcher and basically kills Simon. I'm not going to spoil it. It's an interesting concept. I actually do want to see it. But of course, apparently that the version was dropped because the studio thought it showed a more cruel and menacing side to McClane. Because most of the time he killed in self-defense or something, and this is one who killed for revenge, which I can see why they would think that. I think I could see why they would do that, and also I prefer the ending in the final film over this one, but it would have been interesting to see how the series would have gone and if they had used that one. And also the other one would have made more sense to use in this one. Now, it wasn't filmed, I don't know why. Anyway, what happens is that apparently the grenade, I already mentioned this bomb. The bomb that they defused with the whole water thing apparently is re-triggered, and there's a dark comedic moment when Simon goes, "Does anyone have a..." No, I'm gonna try. I won't do it to my German accent. I'm just. Does anyone have a 4-gallon jug? No, let's have Arnold do it. Does anyone have a 4-gallon jug? I'm the governor. I cannot go out in this explosion like this. It's virtually in a John McClane movie. I don't know how to do it, but that would have been interesting to actually see filmed. I could just imagine Irons getting the dark comedy out of that line. But alas, it wasn't filmed. At least I would like to read the scripted pages. If they still exist somewhere. Anyway, the movie's a little over 2 hours, and it moves at a pretty good pace. I was entertained the whole time, and like I said, this is my second favorite in the series. And if they hadn't made another Die Hard film after this, it would have been the series ending on a high note. And of course, the series was dead for 10 years before Live Free or Die Hard came out. And of course, you can tell that's the next entry in the series, and I look forward to watching it, even though I'm going to be watching a PG-13 movie when the first 3 were R. Well, in conclusion, McTiernan does a good job returning to the director's chair. Willis, Jackson, Irons, and the rest of the cast do pretty good jobs. The score is excellent. Cinematography is very good. And all in all, it's a very fun action film and a very fun sequel.